I want you to pretend that we're in the late 1700s, and I want to tell you one quick thing. North America at this time did not actually revolve around Washington, it revolved around a river, a very muddy, beautiful, strong, powerful river that we still to this day call the Mississippi. Now, that particular river, it was not just water or muddy water, it was a highway, it was a lifeline, it was this very liquid spine that ran through the continent. There were farmers in Kentucky and Tennessee, and they did not send crops east over the mountains. They actually floated them south down the Mississippi to one place and one place only that mattered more than any other. And I'm sure you might be able to guess what place that might be. If you guessed New Orleans, you would be correct. Now, whoever controlled New Orleans at this time actually controlled all of American trade. They could either choke it or they could let it breathe. Now, at first, Spain actually held this very important city. Now, this worked out all right because Spain was very cautious. They were very bureaucratic. They were sometimes a little irritating. They could be kind of annoying. But Spain was also very, very weak, which is kind of a good thing in a sense. Now, for a time, Americans actually tolerated Spanish rule because they had no better option. It's kind of like that annoying friend that you can kind of put up with because they have like a nice pool or something like that. So it was working out. But then came this horrible nightmare of a scenario, and this happened in the year 1800. Now, in a very quiet European agreement called the Treaty of San Ildefonso. I'm sure I'm saying that in the most Oklahoma way I possibly could, but during this particular treaty, Spain actually handed Louisiana back, and not to this fading empire or just some cool people who were hanging out, but to Napoleon Bonaparte. Now, I know you've heard rumors and stories and probably not some great things regarding Napoleon. He was not exactly known as a rational guy. He was not exactly known as somebody that you could really compromise with. He was just kind of a power hungry little fella, which I get it. I mean, I totally get it. But Napoleon, he did not want Louisiana out of nostalgia or just because, it was a great investment or something. Napoleon was desperately and emphatically trying to build himself an empire, or really build a French empire. And he was very good at it, I will say. You got to give it to the man. He was highly motivated. He was not lazy. He was doing his part. And at the end of the day, France's old colonial dream had never fully, passed away. It had simply been waiting for the right man to help spring things into action. Now, Napoleon seemed to be that particular guy. Louisiana was going to be this little supply depot. It was going to be the beating heart of a new French presence in the Americas, which sounds great, I suppose, but that means that New Orleans was its gate. It was its entry point. It was its leverage, France's leverage, Napoleon's leverage. They were going to use it too. So when word reaches the United States, they're like, okay, we got to figure something out. We do not want to be hanging out neighbors next to this particular guy. There was an immediate response, and a lot of it was this anxiety fueled, holy hell, we've got to figure something out. And President Thomas Jefferson, old Tommy Jeff, he understood something very terrifying. He knew that Spain was very weak. He knew that France was not weak at all. A French New Orleans meant French warships, it meant French armies, it meant French ambition that was going to be parked directly on America's western border. Now, Jefferson wrote in private, which, obviously isn't so private anymore, buddy. Maybe you should have been less famous. But he wrote very privately that France at New Orleans would force the United States to, quote, marry itself to the British fleet, which they didn't really want to do. Tensions were still a bit hot. We just kind of had a war with Britain, but, desperate times, we'll do what we have to do. Now, this was not hyperbole. This was desperation. I mean, this was complete and total like, "Oh my god, we don't really care for Britain, but like you so little that we would rather marry ourselves to them than deal with these French people controlling this huge chunk of land, and most of all, Old New Orleans. We can't be having that." Now, Thomas Jefferson, he was a man of contradictions. He believed in very limited government. He was very strict and took the interpretation of the Constitution very, very literally. It was a republic of farmers, not empires. And yet, he now faced a moment that demanded either very bold action or national suffocation. Now, the Constitution said nothing at all about buying foreign land, nothing about acquiring empires. Now, Jefferson knew this and it haunted him. But what he also knew was that if America lost access to New Orleans, the Western states might break away entirely. The Union itself was once again at high risk. So Jefferson took it upon himself to make a decision that was going to define his presidency, and not necessarily in the way that he had envisioned for himself. He was going to try to buy just New Orleans. That was his goal. Just the city, just the port, just enough to keep the river open. Just a little bit of insurance. He just wanted a little bit, just a little bit. So he sends James Monroe over to Paris. Now, once over there, James Monroe was going to join the American minister, Robert Livingston. Now, their instructions were very cautious. Their budget was very limited. Their expectations, very, very modest, if I do say so myself. They had no idea what was about to fall into their laps.